Yay Networks.
Welcome to Greg Louganis is Alive, the podcast that challenges what you think you know. I'm your host, Greg Louganis, and yes, I'm still alive. I'm also joined by my good friend and manager, Beth Zinman.
Hello, hello. Yay, Greg is still alive.
Yeah.
It's Monday and Greg's alive. Awesome news. All right. So
Today, we have Dr. Kate Stone, right?
Cool. Yeah. And so is this on diversity? Is that what you're going to be talking about, or like inclusion, all that, or?
Well, so Dr. Kate and I met on Clubhouse. And so we were in similar rooms, going into some LGBTQAI plus rooms because she's transgender. And so mindfulness rooms, and loved what each other had to share. And we just connected. And she really inspired me to be more plant-based, diet-wise. And then she said, "Oh, I've never rollerbladed." And then I learned that she was in California. And I said, "Okay, meet me at 2:00 on Monday, and I'm going to teach you how to rollerblade." And I got rollerblades and all that. And so we've been doing that for the past 2 years.
Yeah.
And so
now everybody knows what you do when you're done recording the podcast on Mondays.
Right,
you take off for Venice Beach.
Join us.
Right.
Yeah. Join us. We've had some people join us.
Yeah.
Which has been a lot of fun. And it's great. And it's so funny because I had to read up on her bio. Okay. So Dr. Kate Stone is a physicist and founder of an interactive technology company called Novalia. And she's given multiple TEDx talks, keynote speeches focusing on what the future might look like if we truly understood what makes us and our environment thrive. And she speaks on diversity. She speaks on, she created this technology that is interactive, that's at the Smithsonian. And she shared it with me. I remember seeing, you push, you just tap this tablet and it tells you what you're looking at.
It's very cool.
It's really wonderful.
Yeah, it's really cool. You've told me some things, and then I've had the pleasure to speak with her on the phone a few times, and looking at also, what she's done. One of the things that struck me, if I read this correctly, maybe you can ask her, was the technology she created was bought by Amazon, I think, or Google, or one of those big companies.
I remember she was working on something like that.
Yeah, and it's like basically what we use to write on tablets, like to use those little pens on tablets. I thought it was really cool. She's brilliant. She's really brilliant. You've said a lot of great things about her, and I was thrilled to be able to meet her in person one day. I'm sure.
Yeah. And I think the curious thing, especially to allow our viewers, people listening, kind of a little insight, so we're not like talking over people. Is sharing, who Dr. Kate is. She's got a fascinating story. Talking about diversity, as a transgender individual, and
she transitioned quite some time ago. It was like 2007.
Yeah, 2007.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's she's a scientist. She's all of this. So stay tuned. I'm really looking forward to sharing my conversation with Dr. Kate Stone. Okay, so Dr. Kate, because there's an audience out there who doesn't know you.
Yes.
That I think that probably what I'd like to hear you share is, what you talked about in taking your narrative back
Okay.
of what happened. I mean, what happened to you was just, mind blowing for one, but also that journey that set off like a chain of events that you had to deal with, manage. You had to make sense of all of that.
Where would you like me to go back to?
Well, so you were gored by a wild deer, right?
Yeah. Yes. I laugh at that because it's a phrase that whenever I say to anyone, they don't understand the words, because they're words that go together that mean something that no one's ever heard before.
Right?
Especially off the lips of the person who it happened to. So I always have to preface it and say, I'm going to say something to you now that will make no sense, but it makes entire sense. Yes, I was gored through the throat by a wild deer on a dark night between Christmas and New Year in Scotland about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I can say more.
Yeah, no. I mean, because like, okay, so that is, that very, very traumatic.
Yeah.
Very, very traumatic experience. But also, what happened, around, surrounding that, because you were in transition, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, just the, the invasion of privacy, I guess it would. I would say.
Yeah. I could flesh it out some more, just so it gives a bit more context, and also just a tad on my background. As you know, because we chat every week, I'm a scientist and created a company that makes interactive posters and tech and stuff, so I'm very creative and very sciencey, and that took me onto the stage at TED. So 1 year before I was gored by the stag in Scotland, I was on the TED main stage in Long Beach, which was the last year TED was in Long Beach. And I gave a talk about my work. And I DJ'd with a piece of paper, and got, that's what I love. I love making music and, developing tech and making this very creative, immersive kind of tech, invisible tech sort of art-based experiences. That's what I do. And just coincidentally, I was also, as far as I know, the first open trans woman to speak on the TED stage. But the people at TED and I we never spoke about that. We never discussed it. It was never, acknowledged, not acknowledged. I just assume people know and all of that. And so, I gave that talk, and 6 months later it came out over the summer, and the people at TED were very anxious about the comments that might come on YouTube or wherever that would be very anti-trans, as I was too. And there really wasn't really very much. They had someone on standby to delete comments or whatever, but they didn't really have to do very much because, whilst, like I say, as far as I know, I was the first open trans person to speak on the TED stage. A decade ago, we'd kind of got to a point where, so what if someone's trans? It's not actually not that big a deal. And so, that anxiety then dissipated. I was like, oh, okay, and another kind of weird little coincidence in my head is later on that year, a few weeks before I was gored by the stag, I was invited by, basically Rupert Murdoch's printing factory in London, which is the biggest newspaper print facility in the world, to go and tour their printing presses, meet with some of the directors in the boardroom who were interested in the tech that I developed, because they thought, it's not, my tech can't save their industry or anything, but it might have some impact. And they were very curious. Prints, they're struggling, they're dying out, dinosaurs. They're like, maybe Kate and her tech could, inject a bit of life into us. And they had me in the boardroom climbing up and down the printing presses. I didn't know that just weeks later, those printing presses would be running headlines, some of which in the UK said on the front page, sex swap scientist gored by stag. And that was shocking. I was gored by a stag, left on a forest floor, breathing through a hole in my neck, thinking I'm going to die, knowing I'm going to die. I was certain, not a kind of like panic. Oh, we're all going to die. Like we're just taking off on a plane. It's like, no, there's a hole in your throat. You're on a forest floor. You're going to die. And accepting, looking back on my life. Yeah. Proud of everything I've done. And going, this is going to happen. You know what? Let's not struggle. Let's just focus on breath, which is wonderful that you took me through that in the beginning. Right. I was like, I'm going to focus all my mind on the next breath in. It's like, oh, I'm still alive. Let's do a breath out. And I survived. I went through that awful ordeal, previous ordeal, doing the TED Talk, transitioning 5 years previous to that, thinking the world's going to hate on me. TED Talk's fine. I'm in the newspaper printing presses. That's all fine. But suddenly, gored by the stag, front page, I'm now a sex swap scientist, and 6 national newspapers in the UK wrote about my transition, and they sensationalized it because I was trans. And that was a horrible thing. It was like waking up to 1970s headlines. It's like, what happened? Did I go through like some time transition when I was in that coma? Because I was in a coma for a week as well. Yeah. There's a little background.
Well, it's just, it's just like, so, I mean, that's out of your control, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what the press does. That's what media does, is they, light a fire and blow it out of control, right?
Yeah.
But my curiosity in your own mind, because all we have is control over ourselves and how we, the meaning that we give things,
absolutely,
as well as in how we respond or react. How did you take that narrative back in your mind? I mean, how did you come to a place of peace, of acceptance, and it's like, okay, this is just who I am.
So so it's interesting. You say that the only thing we have control over is the meaning that we give things, and I think it was Viktor Frankl said the last great freedom we have is the freedom to choose how we feel. I think that's what he said. And something that I've come to realize is that in every single moment we have two choices. Each choice has a list of options. The first one is to choose how we feel about what just happened to us. How do I interpret what just happened? As you say, what meaning do I give it? That's my freedom. I can choose that. The second one is that whatever you chose, whatever meaning you chose to place on what happened, then creates your next choice, which is a list of options of how can I react. If I decide I think this is an apple, I'm going to choose to react to eat it in a different way if I was to choose to think this is a banana. So actually, I've kind of come to realize that actually it's more important to choose how we feel than it is to choose what we do, because how we feel creates the options going forward that we can go forward with. So, if we start to make negative assumptions and, place more negative and restrictive and dark meaning on things that happen, we really restrict our ability to then, choose how we react and how we go forward, which then entirely changes the probability of the next event that's going to happen to us. So that freedom of the meaning we place on things, which I know you've said before, is so important. So I could choose to feel the world hates trans people, newspapers hate trans people, they hate me, they vilify me, but I was very fortunate. That's why I gave the other background. Previous year and 6 months earlier, TED stage, on there, trans woman, no one really cared.
Yeah.
They were really interested in that I was DJing with a piece of paper and remixing a drum and bass
Right.
remix of
Right.
my niece's song, which was fun, which went on to be sampled by Mark Ronson in his TED Talk. Secondly, I climbed the printing presses. I was in their boardroom. They loved me. They liked me. They wanted to work with me. So I could choose to put that information in the hopper. Like, they don't dislike me. They are just having a knee-jerk reaction, an old school way of thinking. Oh, trans woman, we have to give background, form a name, date of operation. They just went into default mode, like of what they would normally do. But I knew that behind it, these were not people who hated me.
Right.
If I thought there were people that hated me, I've got to get them fired. I've got to get a petition. I've got to create outrage, and that if I attack them, they're going to defend themselves. If I do not attack them, they are defenseless.
Right.
So I met them with kindness.
And that's just it, because hate met with hate, it only creates hate.
Yeah.
The only way to neutralize hate is through love.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love and kindness. I mean, it really is. And it's almost like, we owe it to ourselves.
Yeah.
To move through the world that way.
Yeah, because we create a bubble around us that influences people to act in a different way, So, for example, I have a colleague and friend staying with me at the moment from the UK, from London. So a little, more of my English accent, choice of words and things are coming out, although then she's having to wonder why I'm saying things like grocery store and sidewalk and oatmeal when she wants porridge.
Porridge.
So when we're around different people, we tend to modify our language, our body language, the words we use, and people meet us with that. So if we turn up with anger, distrust, suspicion, we're met with that. People will speak in that accent with us too. Right. And if you turn up with kindness, it doesn't mean that people instantly show up with kindness. It's really, the science brain is right. It's all about changing probabilities. It's all about just tipping the balance of things. I can't change black into white, but there is no black and white. I can move a dark shade of gray a little lighter that might be met with something a little lighter. It's just all about nudging probabilities and changing things. And that's how we can manifest. That's how we can manifest things. It's just by altering that balance a little. So approaching things with kindness doesn't mean someone's going to respond with kindness. It means they are more likely to respond with kindness.
Right. Yeah, because you have no control over, how anybody responds, reacts, all of that, how they're, creating whatever meaning that they're devising in their own brains and feeling. But I mean, I go along the side, the probabilities of what you're talking about, I kind of see as energy.
It's the same.
Yeah, probability, energy, because it influences. Yeah, it influences what that potential response is.
Because everything is tending towards a state of balance. Generally, I trying to find its place of equilibrium. It's on a journey there. So if you can just tip a few things here and there, you can. It's all about nudging things, really, isn't it? And I think if you deliver things with kindness, you're changing the probability of people making that first choice. What meaning do they place on this? If you just say something to someone in an abstract deadpan way, you leave it totally open. If you say it with slight negativity, they're more likely to assume it's negative. You do it with kindness, just more likely to make that assumption. And it was what I wanted. So what I did, I was lucky. I found some people online who were able to help me, who understood the newspapers, understood the rules, and were able to help me write my letters to the press to tell them about how I feel about what they'd done. And I was adamant that these are going to be kind, non-judgmental letters. And I determined that I wanted two things from them. I wanted them to admit to me personally that what they did was wrong and unkind, and also that what they did went against their own rules. And I just wanted them to acknowledge that. And I took them on a journey so they could feel my perspective. And I wanted them to have that moment of horror personally, of just going, oh, we really shouldn't have done that. how did we let that happen? Why did we do that? I wanted them to see themselves. And that's why I couldn't come at them with anger. I had to help them see the world through my eyes. Right. And they did. And then I asked them to write me a letter, each of the 6 newspapers, that just said that what they felt, they'd done what they felt was wrong, and it broke their rules. And then I didn't ask for apology, because I don't want an apology. Apologies to me are kind of worthless.
Right.
Action is a consummation of apology. Like, don't say sorry. Just don't do it again.
Just don't do it.
Just don't do it again. Yeah.
It's your behavior. It's your behavior that, flips that.
Yeah.
Because then that you have created.
Yeah.
Impact.
So I wanted to give them themselves the space to see themselves through my eyes, and give themselves the space to change a little and to reflect a little. And so just to get it on the record, I asked for that to be published in what's called the Press Gazette in the UK, which is a newspaper that no one reads because it's a newspaper industry newspaper. So it's just there on the record for the newspaper industry. It's not like a mainstream newspaper, but it got it on record. They thought that was it. So on the Friday that went out, and then on the Saturday I'd been contacted by Channel 4 News, which is the main news station in the UK, kind of. I'd say it's like the main most respected evening news show. And they'd asked if I'd come on the show. And I said, no, I want to be in the studio. So I was there in the studio with the anchor. The news opened up with the headline story about me. And now the headline was 6 national newspapers admit they are wrong. So I'm smiling and have a little glee and a little smugness, I know. But I'd entirely switched the narrative. And I'd flipped it totally on its head. But I wasn't doing it in an unkind way. And the crazy thing is the consequence was the newspaper industry itself, which was trying to change, had recently been asked to change its regulatory body to include 3 members of the public on the panel that reviews the rules alongside the editors that the British press have to abide by. And they asked if I'd join that panel. And I'm in my 6th year of being on that panel. So I found myself sat in like either the oak paneled rooms with like some retired High Court judge or something next to Paul Dacre, present editor at the time of the Daily Mail. I'm sat next to the Daily Mail editor, was very nice. He's very vilified in the UK. He poured me some tea, asked how my last few months had been. I offered him a little plate with some biscuits on, and he took one, and we sat and chatted, and and I realized my role is I'm just in the room as a calm and reasonable and kind person. I'm not there to fight for trans people. I'm there to be a trans person that's also a respected member of the public. And that, just being in the room, being at the table with these people and being kind is sometimes what we have to do. It's what I do. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not, banging on the tables. It's not, it's not all of that. It's just being.
Yeah.
Just being, who
exactly.
you are, all of who you are.
Yeah.
Without apology, without, it's just who we are, and navigating, and, people will make up the stories.
Yeah.
People are going to make up those stories in their own heads.
Yeah. So we can just give people a little nudge. And, do I want them to see me as an angry person or a kind person?
Right.
It's entirely going to change the stories that they make up.
Yeah. One thing I also want to address, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. I'd like to, give a shout out to anybody who's listening. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, because I remember your daughters came and to go to rollerblade one Monday, and it was so wonderful meeting them. And I said, I was, I was here with your mother. I mean, oops. And I was like, Kate, who are you?
Yeah, I know.
And then you just turned to me, and we were all laughing, and it was just like, I'm just Kate.
I'm just Kate. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm just Kate. And that's who I am. I'm their parent. And, if they want to call me dad, they can call me dad, but they often don't. But it's fine. It's all good because
Yeah.
I'm their dad. But
Yeah.
other people can see me as their mom or whatever they want. It's fine.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and it's okay, give yourself grace, give others grace. And it's like, because, if you're not exposed to something, how can you know?
Yeah.
It was like, it was so funny because like where I grew up, it was pretty much Caucasian. So I was like the darkest, I was in high school when I met my first, Black person. And it was like, oh, wow. Okay. So, and this is not on TV and it's real. And it's like, oh, okay. So if you're not exposed to things,
No.
you can't make, assumptions, and there's got to be a learning curve. And so in that learning curve, you need to give yourself grace and also have that grace for others.
I mean, similar from I'm from a village in Cheshire in the middle of England, and, and the same thing. I mean, I don't think I'd seen any other Black people or many other races. It's very white English, small village, and grew up in that. But also for myself, I'm the first trans person that I met, and I mean, obviously I'm trans my whole life because that's, my first memory from being 4 years old. But in terms of being a transitioned trans woman, I'm probably the first one that I met, and I met her when I was almost 40.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Which is crazy. And, and so I have to recognize, which I think is along the lines of what you're saying, is that many people I meet have never met someone like me. Mm-hmm. So I'm their first contact. I'm the ambassador of my kind to these people. So, I'm representing. So I kind of got to put on my best show and be a nice person.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's like, somebody was talking, this woman was describing her child, who's transitioning and all that, or questioning it, and said, "Oh, you're a unicorn." Right. It's like, embrace that unicorn, because it can be incredibly magical. It can be wonderful. It's really important for me to eat clean and eat healthy. And it's not always easy. I mean, what do you shop for? It just takes up so much bandwidth to try and figure out, what do I want to eat? And how can I eat healthy? Green Chef is the #1 meal kit for eating clean, with dinners that work for you and not the other way around. Kickstart your clean eating routine this September with 80+ weekly options featuring nutritionist approved and foodie approved recipes with variety and customization options for every lifestyle. Green Chef is the only meal kit that is both carbon and plastic offset. Check clean eating off your to-do list this jam-packed back-to-school season with our new quick and easy recipes, ready in 25 minutes or less. This brand new collection of ultra-convenient options feature keto, delicious discoveries, and plant-based options to keep you on track, reaching your goals in record time. I love Green Chef. It's all in one bag, and you just chop everything up and put everything together, and it's quick, easy, and convenient. Go to greenchef.com/60GregPod and use the code 60GregPod to get 60% off plus free shipping. That's greenchef.com/60GregPod and use the code 60GregPod to get 60% off and free shipping. Green Chef, the #1 meal kit for eating well.
It's a superpower. I mean, it's a superpower that everybody has, and, again, like my physics brain is like thinking of everything's moving to a state of equilibrium, but also everything is a everything is wobble. Everything is a wobble. Everything is always a wobble, right? It's always
Right.
about, refining that wobble. But that wobble is always also a resonance.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you find who you are, you get on resonance. And that's when your superpower, when your abilities can amplify, when you can discard the parts of you that aren't really you, that are holding you back, when you can change the parts of you that you're pretending to be like everybody else more into parts of you. When you become wholly you, that's when you can resonate as wholly you. And everyone has that. Everyone has access to that superpower. I'd grown up thinking, I was trying to get this right, how I say this. I'd grown up thinking, I hadn't realized that what I thought was my greatest weakness was actually my greatest strength.
Right.
I grew up thinking that who I was something I needed to escape, was something that I was ashamed of, was something that I hated, was something that was going to hold me back, that was something that was going to stop me having a normal life like everyone else. And it was only until, like I say, I was like in my late 30s that I realized that who I am is not my greatest weakness. It's my greatest strength. And when I fully lent into being me, that's when, the fat hairy caterpillar became a beautiful butterfly.
Exactly. I mean, I had that experience when I wrote Breaking the Surface, my autobiography, because in my view, I was sharing all of my weaknesses. I'm dyslexic, I'm gay, I'm HIV positive, I'm this. I was in an abusive relationship, being abused, and all of these, my perceived weaknesses. But by sharing that, I was actually sharing my strength.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it comes back to this point that we have these two choices. And the first one is choosing how we interpret what just happened. How do I interpret me? How do I interpret what makes me different? And it's like, once I interpret that in a positive way, then it entirely opens up my world of options in choice 2. How do I react? This happens in every single moment of our life. How do I perceive what just happened? Entirely chooses what I can go from. When I'm like feeling like I'm positive because this is who I am and this is my strength, this is positive, and like my whole world of options changed. Like they only changed because I changed how I perceived what meaning to place on everything, really.
Right. I mean, and it's so vitally important what the meaning we give things.
Yeah.
Whether it is about our gender identity, our sexual sexual preferences, all of those things. It doesn't necessarily it's not who we are. It's a snippet of who we are. We're all so much more. And also, like, if something isn't working for you, if because that is something that I've been up. I just quit vaping, so it's like, okay, this isn't working for me. This isn't, it's like it, because I feel that it is shifting my vibration. It's not incongruent with who I want to be, right?
Yeah.
So taking that away and letting that go, then I can be more of who I want to be, and we can choose who we want to be.
Yeah, because that baggage,
in every moment.
Exactly, and that baggage puts us out of resonance. I just tell a little story about my dad. I never really talk about my dad. I'm not seeing my parents since I was in my 20s. I don't even know where they are, where in the world they are. They disappeared. But my dad was a mechanical engineer, a vibrational engineer. And because of that, in my early teens, we lived in the Middle East, in Oman, and in Brunei, on Borneo in my late teens. And he worked for Shell. And his job was to put instruments on machines, huge turbines or whatever, out in the desert or whatever, and listen to the noise that they were making and determine how to remove a little bit from here or add a little bit to here to put things back in balance. So where something's lacking, where something has a little extra baggage, it creates these extra big wobbles. That's when something's out of alignment. And when you shave these things off, add these little bits, or the little weights they add onto the car wheels, when they spin them to get them in balance. That's when things become aligned, and things can really fly. So it kind of reminds me of that. We all need to be vibrational engineers of our own life. How can I, what can I lose? What can I allow to be what it should be? And how can I bring myself into resonance?
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like I should have a tuning fork or something. Okay.
Yes.
Am I there yet? Am I there yet? Am I there yet? Am I? Yeah. Because you're always questioning.
And you know what?
There.
And the tuning fork is, does it bring me joy?
Right. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. And that's what, sorry, go ahead.
That's the tuning fork. Oh my God. That is so wonderful. Oh, I love that. I love that.
It's funny because, people ask me why I like living in LA. And I don't know. But I really, really, really love living in LA. I just makes me so happy. I just love it. And after I was first here, which was a few years ago now, I wrote a little essay about that. I don't even know if I ever posted the essay anywhere, but the essay was called "Does my butt look big in this?"
No.
And the idea was, is LA the right place for me to live? I could listen to people who tell me it's not right for me or it is right for me. Am I in the right job? I could listen to people telling me whether that's right or wrong. I could think whether that's right or wrong for me. Are these the right friends that I should have? It's like, I don't know. And then I realized it's like looking at a dress on a hanger. Is that the right dress for me? Is it the right style? Is it the right thing? I don't know. Try it on.
Right.
Look at myself in the mirror. I'm not looking at the dress. I'm looking at me. How do I look? Does it make me glow? Mm-hmm. Does that dress put a smile on my face? Do I feel great? So is LA right for me? I don't care what anyone else says. I feel happy. It brings me joy. It makes me glow. People tell me when I go home, whatever, you're looking great. And it's not like I've had some crazy LA plastic surgery or anything like that. I just feel super happy. When you're going to meet your friends, do you feel joy or do you feel trepidation when you're going to go and have dinner with some friends because they're going to start to say these things or whatever? When you're on your way to work, do you feel joyful? Does it make you glow? All of these things. So, when you look at the dress, does your butt look big? When I grew up, my mom was always like, is my butt look big in this? And we didn't say butt because she's British, but it was a bad thing that your butt was looking too big when I grew up. Now it's a good thing,
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah.
It's all a matter of interpretation anyway. Whether your butt looks big or small, it's not about
if
that.
that's what you want, or if that's not what you want, right?
Does it make me glow? Does it make me glow?
Does it make you glow? That's right.
That's the tuning fork, and that's how we should measure everything in our lives. Not whether we think it's right for us, not whether other people think it's right for us or not. Does it bring you joy? And need no more information than that.
Yeah. The tuning fork is joy.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
I love that.
And the most joyful thing in my week is what I call the heartbeat of my week, which is a consistent thing that happens every week that brings me joy, is going rollerblading.
Yes, I'll see you there. I'll see you there. I mean, and this is open for anybody. Mondays at 2:00. Come join us in Venice. I mean, it's great. We've had a number of people come and join us, and it's been such a blast.
We have, and I think we've both discovered, because we're on the beach, we're at Venice Beach. We could be swimming in the ocean. We could be lifeguards. We could be whatever. Both of us, I think, recently, after watching a certain film, have realized, what do we do down in Venice? We just beach.
We just beach. We just beach. Yeah, right.
We put on our rollerblading outfits.
Yeah. Thanks, Barbie. Oh, too funny.
Well, exactly.
Dr. Cates, thank you so much for joining me. This has been so wonderful. I think that there's a lot to take from what we've gotten through. your tuning fork is joy, is the joy. It's I'm really taking that down, writing it down. But thank you for sharing your story, and this is just the beginning. I'll have you back. I'll have you back. Okay.
I've just seen something in my background that just reminded me of something. So I have this saying, when adventure calls, you pick up. And it doesn't mean that you have to say yes. It just means when the caller ID says adventure, you take the call and you listen. And then, then you choose, do I go on adventure or not? So I have this imaginary red telephone. So there's a red telephone in the background. When the red phone rings, that is adventure calling. So when the red phone rings, you pick up and you take the call and you entertain the idea. But again, I'm not condoning you have to say yes for everything, but I think entertaining the idea. And what I've realized, it's not about doing things that I don't want to do. It's recognizing that when I don't want to do something, is it because I'm too scared, or because I genuinely don't want to do it? And so if it's because I'm too scared and it's something that I actually really want to do, then I start to imagine myself in the future being older and no longer able to do those things that I never did because I was scared. So I use the fear of regret to help me to do the things that I would otherwise be too scared to do, which is what's enabled me to live so much of my life. So when the red phone rings, pick up.
That is so awesome. Well, Dr. Kate, thank you so much for joining me. And this is Greg Louganis is Alive, the podcast that challenges the things you think you know. So hit like, subscribe, and share with others, and join us for future podcasts. Thank you. Namaste.
Yay Networks.